So today I'd like to talk about the elephant in the room. Since we're busy with Hanon and we've come to this part where it's all just scales, I decided to just quickly, well, not that quickly, but try to touch on what is a scale and what type of scales do we get, as well as why it is so important not to ignore it and play it, since it is and forms a very crucial part of a very, very good practicing routine and also to promote improvement. You like this video, if you like what I'm doing, please don't be afraid to hit the subscribe button, share it with all your friends, and drop me a comment below to share your experiences with scales or music. So by definition, a scale is basically just a set of pitches that we use in music. It is like a kind of musical construct that we work in. And yes, we all know that our teachers, and we've heard this before and probably read it online as well, that if we play scales, then it will improve our technique and it will make us just all round play better. But why? Why? Because many of us, even my students, when they play scales, they're like, oh, why do I have to play scales? Well, there's good reason for it. So the origins of scales, basically what happened was they had all these different instruments and, well, they had to kind of devise a way in order for all these instruments to talk to one of each other. And a scale, the basic scale patterns and modes that we get today is basically a construct, a structure that is universal. Just like we all know that music is like a universal language, basically helps the instruments talk to each other in the same language, so that when we play, a violin plays together with a piano, or a trumpet plays together with, I don't know, a flute, they all can play the same pitches, and the music that is notated can be read by the musician that is yielding that instrument. Now, there are different kind of scale types, but the most important scale type that we get, or the most prominent one, is the diatonic. And by the diatonic basically means that there are seven notes that are repeating over and over and over again in different registers or octaves, whatever word you prefer. But say, for example, if we have C, D, E, F, G, and A, and B, that's the musical alphabet. And the diatonic scales always follow a very specific pitch pattern. And this pitch pattern can be whole tones or tones and half tones or semitones. And we'll get into that just a tad bit because, as you know, Hanon has major scales and we have minor scales, and the minor scales is divided into harmonic and melodic. Each one has a specific function, and it comes more from a cultural side or a cultural perspective, or from in what type of music it's basically used in. The modern major scale, the Ionian, is the scale that we all know. It always sounds happy, and we always have a semitone between the third and fourth pitch and the seventh and eighth pitch. Then we get two other scales that we are very, very familiar with. Well, actually three. The Aolian scale. The Aolian type of scale has three different subsets. We have a natural Aolian, we've got a harmonic, and then we've got a melodic. The natural is literally taking the key signature, say for example we've got C major, and then moving it down to A, it's relative minor, and then just playing the notes that the C major scale has within its key signature. As we know, C major doesn't have any accidentals. It means that if we play C to C, we're going to just play the Y keys with the 3, 4, 7, and 8 semitones, and then we have, when we play the A natural scale, we are literally going to play the same notes, still the semitones between B and C, and E and F, but we're not going to alter it. We're not going to make it sound different, and that's why it is a natural scale. When we go and talk about harmonic, the harmonic minor scale, then we lower the third and we raise the seventh, meaning that we get this very, very specific, sad, much more easier on the ear type of scale that we all know very, very well when it comes to playing, especially Western art music. Then we have the melodic scale. And the melodic scale is very special because, as you've now seen with all the Hanon exercises, again, check the playlist, go through them as well. It's very, very good exercises to play and practice. We are still lowering the third, but we are now raising the sixth and seventh pitch or degree as we ascend. And when we come back down, we lower or return the seventh and sixth to its original pitch, while still playing that lower third, meaning that the scale sounds different going up or ascending than it's going to sound when we descend. In this particular section of scales, there's many other different modes, but these modes haven't been used for hundreds and hundreds of years. Here and there you'll get something, and maybe in music from different countries, you'll still get these modes used a little bit, but Mixolydian, Phrygian, Dorian, all those type of scales are extremely old. They're very extremely ancient, used in more ancient type of music. And that's why we don't really get to play them. And there's no real reason to really practice them unless you're going to specialize in more older type of music. Then we have the chromatic scale. And the chromatic scale is basically all 12 tones, every single tone on the keyboard, on the piano keyboard. So if we play from C to C, we're not just going to play the Aolian or Ionian type of scale, we are going to play every single semitone step. And this scale evolved with the rise of tonality within music. And it's basically to help add more color to your basic boring scales. Other scales that are worth mentioning is the whole tone scale. The whole tone scale consists of 6 steps, all a whole tone apart, meaning that there won't be any semitone involved with this scale. And what makes this scale very, very interesting is the fact that there is usually no perfect fifth, which leads us to have this very vague kind of melody or vague kind of music when we play music within this particular scale type. And this came about during the 20th century with the rise of 20th century music and more impressionistic music as well, in order to kind of skew the tonality or the key that was played in. Next up, we get the pentatonic scale. And the pentatonic scale, penta 5 steps within these scales. And this is a scale that is extremely common with your folk music of different countries. And it is also used in Western art music to create effect within certain kind of music and music styles. And lastly, on the other side of the spectrum, we get our invented scales, our microtonal scales, that divides the already known intervals that we know within our scales to even smaller degrees or smaller amounts. And this creates a different soundscape for music and for composers to compose music in. Some beautiful music have been written within these scales. Now that you have an idea of what scales are, and they're not just exercises to punish you for not practicing. Yes, that works quite well sometimes as well, but there is reasons for us to practice scales. And one of the reasons why most of the time when we start with an instrument, that's probably some of the first things that you're going to learn is some basic scales. The first reason why you should practice scales are to develop musical ability and good finger technique on your instrument. Imagine being able to fluently move from key to key. Yes, we don't have to play a scale, but putting it into a construct, putting it into that structure helps us develop our sense of tonality as well as our finger movement much more quicker than just fooling around on the instrument without any direction. The second reason is, remember in the beginning I talked about the construct, the universal language that music is placed in. If a music is written in a certain key, A major, for example, then it's good to know that most of my notes are probably going to come from A major, except for modulation and key changes, which happens quite often. But even then you need to know, okay, well, it's changing from A major to F sharp minor, for example. It's good to know that if I move to this key, these are the notes that are probably going to be used the most. Instead of wondering what comes next, I can use this to my advantage in order to learn a piece much quicker, but also to play with a lot more confidence. The third reason is it will develop these things, our ears, and the way we perceive and hear music. Yes, it's good to know that if a piece of music is starting to play and it sounds happy, I'm not going to say it's a happy piece of music. I'm going to also now know that it is in a major scale. When I first try out notes and I play it, I'm immediately going to realize, well, I'm playing in some kind of a major scale, and then I'm going to work out what that is. Again, reason 4, something I've already mentioned, boosting confidence. Practicing scales will boost your confidence. How? Well, if you have a really, really difficult piece that you are actually playing, then playing scales, knowing that at least I can play scales well, will actually quite boost your confidence. It is an easy thing if you had a really bad day in front of your piano or with your instrument where you just couldn't get that piece right. Picking up a scale and playing and saying, ha! I'm the boss of scales, kind of helps us just to keep being motivated and coming back tomorrow and trying again. Reason number 5, muscle memory. This is very important. Moving from white keys to black keys, especially on a piano, can be quite daunting, especially if you're a beginner. And by doing this in a very safe scale-like environment, it actually helps us to build much better muscle memory as well, is to when to move to different keys as well, how to move as well. Remember, it's not just muscle memory, it's just not just about playing notes. It is also about those small movements, those small minute changes that you have to make when we have to jump over keys or play octaves or play a scale very, very fast. Scales help with those kind of situations. Reason number 6, developing a sense of rhythm and timing. If we play scales with a metronome, not necessarily with our pieces, but scales with a metronome, it kind of helps us to build this inner rhythmic clock of ours, something that will really come in handy, especially if you play scale-like passages within music, or you play classical style music, or even Baroque, where a lot of scale passages are present. It helps us to get those notes, whether it be quavers we're playing, or eighth notes, or semi-quavers, or 16th notes, we are going to be able to execute them a lot more timelessly and a lot more within rhythm without having to also think about that after we've learned the notes. Reason number 7, it will help you learn the map of your instrument or your piano. Well, yes, most definitely. I always say the white keys are the ocean, the black keys are the stars. I know it should be stars are white and ocean in the evening is black. I know, but it doesn't matter. I always say that the stars need to guide us. If we know scales and we know where the accidentals are within each scale, we can actually use that to literally filter out this extremely obscene amount of notes in front of us and just focus on the notes that is needed in order for us to play. And the last reason is knowing your scales, knowing how they look, knowing the map of the keyboard will also assist with your sight reading. When we have unknown piece of music in front of us and we really want to try this just to play through it or just to see if we like it, we don't have a recording of it available, for example, then it really, really helps us to be able to execute by having knowledge of where the keys are, but also if there are scale-like passages, we can always jump to those in order to hear certain snippets as we play them, because it's now all built into our muscle memory, into our mind, and into our ear. So it all translates to what we see on the piece of music. Hopefully this explanation helped you a little bit. Don't skip your scales. Don't skip your scales. Practice them. It's not just about the music. It is about what's going on underneath and how do we improve from the ground up. Now, let's go play some piano.